Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 19th of September, and joining me for this edition are audio reviewer Ed Selley.
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
And assistant editor Steve Withers.
No, I'm doing this because I'm an eccentric millionaire.
Hello, welcome to the podcast on it's a Friday that we record this, and at the moment, looking outside the window, it looks like mid-November. It's greyed over, it's pouring rain, and we had a spectacular thunderstorm last night. Nature really does have the best subwoofers.
I'm just
and the overhead speakers are quite good too.
Oh yeah, the immersive audio is superb. I mean, Dolby hasn't got a hope in hell ever getting close to that.
I'm just looking at the laundry I forgot to bring in last night. It's looking pretty sad. Cock.
It's quite nice here, actually. Sun's shining. It's not too bad.
Back in 1784.
Yeah.
Let's move swiftly on and let's look at competitions. What can we win, Ed?
Right, there is the Stelligis Audio Mega Giveaway. The first prize is an ML30 HD amplifier. Second prize, NS3 active speakers with Bluetooth. And third prize, NS1 active speakers with Bluetooth. I've actually got the ML30 HD amplifier here and the NS3 speakers here. I've been doing some preliminary listens to both. So there will be some information going up on those before the competition ends. I mean, obviously you should enter it anyway. It's free stuff. But you'll have a more sort of nuanced view of what the stuff actually is. We'll get to the bottom of how the brand name's pronounced as well. Additionally, the speakers come in a choice of 7 colours and it's open to all members until the 30th of September. There is also an AK Racing gaming chair, which sounds very exciting. And that's also open to all members. And that also closes on the 30th of September.
Excellent. Any previous winners?
They are not.
There never seems to be.
They basically won't be until the end of the month.
Yeah,
but I've got to ask anyway, though, Steve. You know what I mean? Right, let's move on. Hardware news.
In a way, we're all winners, aren't we? So,
Absolutely.
So, Ed, you weren't here last week. The review is now up on AVForums if you want to go and read it. The new iPhone 7 and 7 Plus. I guess the big question for you, aimed at you, is what about the headphone jack disappearing?
I think people are going to be a bit disappointed about this, Phil, because I'm nowhere near as sort of worked up about this as I guess many people thought that me as a practicing Luddite might be. It's a significant decision on Apple's behalf, but the premise of removing any form of analog transmission until it's within the body of the headphone or earphone is really technically sound and offers enormous potential for accurate, clear sound with the ability to tweak it depending on your environment and other things. So that in itself, I don't have any problems with that at all. I think that going forward, it could be a really, really exciting development. What I'm a bit less excited about is that the company that's done it doesn't actually have a great track record in supporting interesting digital formats and pushing the envelope. So I don't necessarily think we're going to see anything immediately exciting in a sound point of view. That, I have to confess, is completely separate from other things that Apple might be doing with this proprietary wireless protocol of theirs. And the other thing that I have to say has annoyed me quite a bit more is that as well as the AirPod, plenty of other wireless headphone and earphone options exist in the market, and they are improving all the time. You only have to look at the review of the Sennheiser PXC550 that's running on the site at the moment. That's a superbly well implemented Bluetooth headphone. The problem is that Apple, and I think this has to be considered entirely deliberately, has once again issued the iPhone 7 with pretty primitive Bluetooth. It doesn't have aptX. It's not able to send a lossless signal that way. And this is really quite frustrating because companies like Noble, a small earphone manufacturer, have produced a device which pairs to your phone by Bluetooth, then amplifies and connects to an earphone via a conventional 3.5mm jack. That would be completely perfect as far as I'm concerned, and it would work extremely well under those circumstances. But you're still limiting the actual bandwidth of what can be sent. Where I'm really worried, and I think Steve has mentioned this as well earlier in discussions, is that there's rumours that Samsung is also looking at introducing a proprietary headphone connection. We really, really, really don't need that. Essentially, I think we could always rely upon Apple to go their own way, and the market will sort of accommodate that. But I had an off-the-record conversation with someone who works for a fairly large headphone and earphone manufacturer, and they were saying that's, to be honest, not a big deal because they can design products which will interchange between Lightning and USB-C cabling, which is brilliant because even if you're an Apple customer, that's going to allow you to use it with a MacBook in a way that you can't currently easily do with a pair of Lightning socket equipped earphones. So that's fine. But if we then sort of degenerate into every man and his dog using their own headphone connection, that's not good for anybody. So yes.
Well, you see, I said last week, I think Apple played a blinder here because I think all the headphone manufacturers are rubbing their hands with glee because it opens up a whole new market area that they can now... Because, I mean, if you look at anything associated with Apple products like the iPad and the iPhone and so on, the accessory companies and the amount of money that can be made from accessories, like headphones, is massive. Yeah,
it's a gigantic ancillary market, isn't it? And I don't know, personally, I don't really care about them dropping the headphone jack. You know, just means an opportunity to go and buy some new toys. And like you said, Ed, I think a lot of it's moving towards wireless anyway. So people are probably using the headphone jack less and less. I think a lot of people that are complaining are just complaining because people don't like change. But someone had to do it first. And I'm sure we'll find the next generation of mobile phones will probably drop their headphone jacks and start using USB. Hopefully they won't go proprietary connectors, like you were just saying, because that's just a nightmare situation. You got to accept the fact that Apple are always going to do their thing, and they're the exception to the rule. And unfortunately, Samsung of late seem to be trying to reinvent themselves as an Apple, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think a lot of the strength of Samsung's mobile products have been the fact that they have been Android-based, and they have had expandable memories, and they have had more useful connections. You know, that's been the big appeal of those phones to a lot of people, and they aren't, they aren't sort of contained by their own ecosystem the way that Apple products are. So I would hate to see that happen because that would just cause chaos. But I think ultimately, in a few years' time, people will be using either a digital connection or a wireless connection for their headphones, and then everyone will have forgotten about the furore that's surrounded this at the moment.
I do think that it's not quite as simple as that, though, because at the moment, obviously, this is very early days in a transitional process that Apple might be making. But nonetheless, a company that prides itself on the whole "it just works" sort of philosophy, you can't have one pair of earphones that you alternated between an iPhone and a MacBook Pro without some form of adapter. And it's unclear to me. I mean, I imagine it's pretty inevitable that support for AirPod will be added to OS X. It would be foolish if they didn't. Are they going to fit a Lightning connector in addition to USB-C, or would it not? And this is, epoch making. Given that Apple had a hand in the design of USB-C, would they just not be better off switching iPhone back to that, and having a slightly more homogeneous layout of products? Possibly.
It's not lucky been their strong point, though, has it? Doing that. I mean,
no.
once they move in a direction like dropping the old connector for the Lightning connector in the first place, which everyone was up in arms about at the time, but everyone's kind of forgotten about now. I think it's their style, is it really? They tend to just plough their own path, and I mean, they've always wanted their products to be very, very controlled, and that's one of the things that I love about their products. I mean, I use an iMac and a MacBook because I don't want to have the problems of things like viruses. And that's just not an issue within their ecosystem, and so that's one of the big appeals for me. Plus, they look gorgeous, basically.
Well, the big appeal with Apple products, and I'm not an Apple fanboy, although I do own quite a few products, is that they always work. That's the main thing. They work, and if anything goes wrong, it's usually really easy to fix. I've never once had to go into an Apple store and speak to a genius.
Well, that's probably as well, because I tend to find that they're rather overselling themselves with the use of that word. I do agree with this, but at the moment, in order for this to work for Apple, they either have to make their earphones USB-C compatible to work with MacBooks as they stand, or after 5 years of whittling connections back on MacBooks, they're going to have to add a second one in the form of a Lightning connector.
Yes.
So I'll be interested to see what they do there.
I think we're going to have to be courageous and move things on from this conversation. I'm sure we'll come back to it, but it'll be interesting to see how this progresses, because if it's like anything else that Apple does, there'll be all this hoo-ha for about 4 weeks, and then everybody forgets. Once the phones are out there and people think, actually, I'm going to go and buy one, like Steve's going to do, then he succumbed to the PR, basically, haven't you?
I have, yes. I'm a sucker for that.
Have you actually ordered it then, or are you still?
No, not yet. No. I mean, my contract's up in November on my current phone, so I'll probably do the usual thing of upgrading my phone and passing on the older one to the missus.
So when we all fly out to Las Vegas on that quite long flight, are you going to have some sort of means of charging and listening to your phone at the same time, or have you got some other plan in action?
No, I usually use the in onboard entertainment, watch some films.
I watch a lot of movies, basically, on flights.
Don't tend to listen to music a hell of a lot. In fact, the only thing I use my iPhone for, music-wise, is Tidal. I'll offline a load of stuff and then listen to it in the car, through the Bluetooth in the car. I've never plugged a pair of earphones or headphones into my iPhone, ever.
There you go.
I have. I tell you what, and this is something I do agree with. People have been complaining. Obviously, if you buy an iPhone 7, it's going to come with the earpods and lightning connector. Great, but I do find that those Apple designed it, regardless of sound quality, they're really uncomfortable to wear. I don't know what's shaped my ears, but I can't. I struggle with most in-ear headphones anyway, earphones anyway, because I don't know why, but I just find them really uncomfortable. So finding a pair of comfortable earphones for me is the key, and then the connector is really a secondary issue. Anyway, it comes with an adapter, so it's not like it's the end of the world, is it? You can just I don't know what a big deal is. I really don't.
Yeah,
to be honest, I will say, when you say it's not the end of the world, just two, as a weird example, two people in my immediate sort of friends and family turn up to work, and the nature of the work they do, where they just sort of web and software work, they listen to their phones all day. And they're just they have a charger by the desk, and away it goes. That immediately is something that the iPhone 7 is going to struggle with. And it is a specialist use, but actually there are quite a lot of people that do it. So, and if they switch to the AirPod, that doesn't have enough go to last you a working day either. So that's not ideal.
Talking about the AirPods, thenextweb.com shareables, they have a... do you remember the original iPod advert from Apple? The people in silhouette with the white headphones. Well, they've got the earbuds in now, and they're trying to dance, and the earbuds are just flying.
I'll tell you what, they're going to get lost really quickly, aren't they?
I just looked at it. I looked at them and I thought, my God, my son could eat those in about 35 seconds. It's like you just get to meet other parents in A&E. It's like, so how many did he eat? Oh, 3. And so it's like,
yeah, but the thing is that they look like the top of those electric toothbrushes as well. So you could see people accidentally picking up the wrong things as well.
They are at least suppository shaped, so they should pass through his digestive system fairly easily.
I think we need to be courageous and move things on. I really do. I think we need to move things on now. Some breaking news here from Google, actually. The breaking news is that the Google Street View they blurred the face of a cow to protect its identity when they were out.
It's not the first time they've done that, actually. I'm assuming they use software to go through these pictures, blurring out people's faces, and it's obviously got confused between a person and a cow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be racist or anything, but they all look the same to me.
I must get really confused that where Edley is with all those concrete cows knocking about. Is that a real cow? Is that a concrete cow? I think we should talk more about cows' rights, and they do have rights. Even before I eat them, and I do like a nice steak. So
the thing is, though, they are one of the major causes of global warming through.
Cows farting.
Yes. It's one of the major causes because we eat so many of them and we breed so many of them, and there are so many of them that they're a major contributor to the global warming.
Yeah, I've been to China. I'd say that the cows are the least of our worries.
It's just one more ribbon to a vast bow of planetary killing silliness. But there is that company in the Midwest, which strikes me as the strangest place in the world for them to be doing it. But they are the people who it's sort of like a Star Trek replicator, except it's not anything like as sort of slick as that. But it constructs meat from long chain polymers. So it's technically capable of making a steak, which at no stage in its existence has ever been a cow.
Yeah, there was that one. It was a couple of years ago now, wasn't it? They had the live press conference and they had the burger, which was made from synthetic meat. No, thank you.
Fine with me, as long as it tastes nice. I couldn't give them monkeys.
Well, this is the thing, and ultimately you can actually construct the basic building block long chain polymers from all manner of stuff. It is real sort of closed cycle, turn people's into the polymers and away you go. And it also obviously has some fascinating ethical issues for vegetarians, because at no stage in its existence did anything suffer to create it. So
I like the sound of that. I'll put them in a corner. You smug buggers.
Well, I wasn't going to go that far, but it has some fascinating quandaries. And ironically, there is a final irony. I remember the conference about the burger, and they were saying actually it was really quite expensive to do, because you created these very delicate sort of strands of meat, and they actually just put it through a mincer anyway. The irony is that it's less expensive to make expensive cuts of meat than it is to make the cheap ones, which I thought was really quite cool. So that strikes me as fascinating. And if we can cut down on mechanized farming, that probably ain't going to do us any harm either. So
you see, folks,
it uses a lot of oil.
You see, folks, the AVForums podcast, we're always talking about the future. We've got our fingers on the pulse. And talking about the future, there's no sharks, but we're going to talk about lasers again.
Yes.
And Epson are going to update their existing laser projector. Steve?
So Epson have finally announced the LS10500, which is the update of the LS10000. Not a great surprise here, because basically the LS10000 already did a lot of the things that you'd wanted to do in a modern projector, but it didn't have HDR support, and it didn't have an HDMI 2.0A input. Now, given that they just recently released a whole new range of projectors like the CW9300, which have both HDR support and an HDMI 2.0A input, it didn't seem like a great, wild stretch of imagination to see them adding those two features to the existing LS10000, given that it had a relatively high brightness level already, and it could do complete 100% of DCI-P3. And sure enough, they have. So basically, they've added HDR and they've added HDMI 2.0A. So now you can watch HDR content on your laser projector. I guess the interesting thing would be whether there'll be any kind of upgrade path for people that already own a 10,000. I mean, they can't really change the HDMI inputs, which I think will be the limiting factor as far as HDR goes. But basically what it essentially means is that the 10,500 and the TW9300 are essentially the same projector, but one uses a laser light source and one uses a bulb. And I think also you might find that the color space on the laser projector is definitely wider. I've measured the 10,000, and that could do pretty much 100% of DCI-P3. So whether the HDR will look that great is another issue entirely. And we've obviously talked about this previously with things like the JVC and other projectors, that HDR with projectors is a bit of an issue. But I certainly like the idea of the laser light source. You've got the brightness, the consistency, the long lifespan, the wide color space of 100% of DCI-P3. As long as it tracks that correctly within 2020, that's going to be excellent. Obviously, it's not native 4K, but it does have 4K enhancement like the JVCs. And as you and I have discussed previously, Phil, that's probably the least important aspect of the image anyway. And it's 10-bit as well. So I'm sure that once it's released, it's going to be a really impressive projector. And I guess when you get it in for review, Phil, you can let us know how it performs. But, it's an obvious incremental step in terms of laser projection. And I believe it's the same price. Now, admittedly, this was based on the US press release. So they said the price would be the same as the previous generations of 10,000 in the US. Now, whether that's going to be the same in the UK, given all the changes in exchange rates recently, I don't know. Can't say for sure. But certainly they can deliver it at the same price, and it's a nice incremental improvement in performance on what is already a really good projector. So I think that's good news. And obviously it means you get access to laser projection at a significantly cheaper price than granted, it's native 4K in the case of the new JVC, but at least you're going to get many of the aspects that you're getting on that projector for a significantly reduced price.
Well,
I think it's like 6,000 quid, wasn't it?
The full 4K, I couldn't give a stuff. At normal viewing distances, Steve, and we've done the testing, and we've had the native 4K projectors in with the JVCs doing their E-shift, and a normal viewing distance from the screen. It's very, very difficult to tell the difference when it comes to resolution. So the whole native 4K against the full 4K, I'd take a laser projector, 1080p laser projector doing the fake 4K. every day of the week.
Yeah. I've got to say that with this new update, it's a very tempting projector, because I was well impressed with the 10,000. Be very curious to see when you get it in for review how it performs with HDR. But you can always there are always ways around that. And I just think that what's impressive to me and what's very tempting is the fact that you can deliver the full 100% of DCI-P3, and that means you're going to get every single color that's in that graded content. So that in itself is worth having.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. And if it's going to be about £6,000, I think that is a big bargain, and it's something that would tempt me to spend £6,000. And being a reviewer and having this kit coming in and all the rest of it, I mean, we don't tend to go and buy our own kit anymore because we've got so many things turning around and all the rest of it, Steve. Sometimes it's pointless going out and buying it. Well, for you, it'd be pointless for you to go and buy a TV at the minute, with so many TVs coming through and all the rest of it, because you would never get to watch it because you're changing one TV to the next TV every week or every 2 weeks. And it takes a lot for us to actually say, well, I'd actually go and buy that. But I've got to say, the Epson laser, that's really tempting. Really, really tempting.
I think it makes a perfect stopgap until we get to a point where you've got affordable laser native 4K projectors with much higher brightness levels.
Yeah, and let's face it, that's at least another 5 years away.
Absolutely.
At least. So people who think it's going to happen quickly, it's not going to happen as quickly as the TV market. There's not the economies of scale there to make it so.
No.
So, and the only reason that Sony can manage to get stuff down at the £5,000, £6,000 price mark is because they have got the economies of scale, because they make the chips for the professional cinema projectors. So they have the economies there to get down it. But I still think they'll be losing money at that price point for the 320. They've got to be.
Yeah, I think there's a loss leader, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, let's stick with Sony then. The ZD9. A lot of promises made at CES, and as always, I think at the time at CES we said, we don't see this happening. We don't see a 4,000 nit TV happening this year. We don't think it will be. And of course, it isn't a 4,000 nit TV. The technology we were showing was based on a 4,000 nit prototype. But like we said last week as well, I mean, you can make a prototype look as good as you like, because you have, there's nothing forcing you to market. So, you can use whatever components you like in it and whatever software you like and make it look as nice as possible. And people who go and do preview reviews of this stuff as well, you just, why? It's not a product. It ain't coming to market. But anyway, the ZD9 has arrived. It is based on the prototype, but it's obviously a commercial product. It has to hit a price point, Steve. But is it still good quality? Is it still a good TV?
Absolutely, it's a fantastic TV. You're right, Phil. The backlight master drive that was demoed at CES, I mean, clearly Sony was saying at 1,000 local dimming zones and 4,000 nits of peak brightness. That is not the case with this TV. In fairness to Sony, when they launched it back in the summer, they did say they wouldn't actually confirm the number of zones or the peak brightness. But the fact they wouldn't do that was suggesting it wasn't going to be the same as the demo, as the prototype that they demonstrated. And sure enough, when we got it in for review, I actually counted the number of zones, and it's 646, which is still a lot, by the way. I mean, that's more than any other TV on the market. The next nearest in terms of zones is the DX902 from Panasonic. That's got 512. So that's a lot of zones. And peak brightness-wise, it was over 1,800 nits. Again, brighter than any other television so far we've reviewed so far. So although it perhaps isn't delivering what some people expected based upon the prototype we saw at CES, the reality is it's delivering a fantastic performance with more zones and higher peak brightness than any TV we have speculated about that. I think it uses the same design in terms of its looks as there are other models like the XD93 and XD94. So it's a very pretty TV. It's got some really nice touches in terms of design. Picture quality is superb. The local dimming is really, really good. And whether it's standard dynamic range or high dynamic range content, it was an absolute stunner. I love the TV. The only thing that I don't like about Sony's TVs is the Android TV platform. I find that they either aren't using enough processing power, or I don't know how they're implementing it, but they're really flaky. And I had a couple of crashes, and sometimes it doesn't work. And given that I've just been reviewing some Philips TVs that also use Android TV and have been completely robust and stable and had no issues, something that Sony are doing in their implementation is screwing it up. But that would put me off buying it, to be honest, because I just found it really frustrating. But picture-wise, absolutely stunning.
It is a little bit expensive though, this TV, isn't it, Steve?
Yes, well, it's 3,999, so 4,000 quid for a 65-inch TV with some fairly new tech. I mean, we had this debate before, haven't we, about, when you review a lot of expensive televisions, you kind of lose a perspective a little bit, and sometimes you don't realise things are so expensive. I personally don't think that's a lot of money for a brand new flagship 65-inch TV.
It does put it right in there though with the LG OLEDs.
It does indeed, but I think that if you're looking at HDR content, the ZD9 is a better performer. So it depends on what's important to you. There's a lot of plus points to the ZD9 compared to the LG OLEDs. Even in the same price bracket, I think you can make a case for saying that's superior in some respects. And as we've said on previous podcasts, certainly with standard dynamic range content, the OLEDs do look stunning. So, they're great there, not so hot on the HDR. So it's a bit of, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other sometimes. But I think, the big problem Sony have got is things like the huge discounting that Panasonic have done on DS902. So you're looking at, 3,000 something now. No, actually, no, sorry, it's less than £3,000 for the 65-inch. So that's very, very competitively priced at the moment. Even the Samsung KS9500 is cheaper. So, it is toppy for that screen size, no question about it. And unfortunately, they're also competing against themselves because they've reduced the price of the 75-inch XE94, which you can now get for about the same amount of money. Which does make the decision, if you're thinking of buying a TV right now, it does make your decision quite difficult. And unfortunately, I don't have any easy answers. There's no simple solution to this. It's a question of just, looking at what you want in terms of screen size and performance, what's important to you, and then demoing them. But yes, some people would have complained about the price. I don't think actually it's that expensive, and I think you'll probably see it drop relatively quickly as we go into Christmas anyway.
We said back probably February, March time that we didn't think this year would be the year to go and replace your TV. Now we're in September. Do we still think that?
Yeah, I do, more so actually, because something that hadn't really occurred to me. There's lots of things, if you buy a TV now, don't worry, it's going to be good. And I'm pretty sure most manufacturers, if not all, will upgrade their HDR TVs to cover hybrid log gamma, so that won't be an issue. But having seen some 100p, 120p demos, the realization that higher frame rates, which is going to be a factor definitely with broadcast TV going forward, and will make a huge difference to people who like watching a lot of sport. I think that could be a big factor. And I suspect that we'll see a lot more come CES. We're going to see TVs that I'm not sure whether people talk about dynamic metadata a lot and HDR10 dynamic metadata, and is this a big deal? I think that's less of an issue, personally. I don't think that's a big deal at all. But I think higher frame rates is going to be a big deal. And I think we'll see TVs coming out in CES that do have a higher frame rate panel, and that's going to be a big issue. So if you don't need to buy a TV right now, and given where we are in the year, definitely wait to find out what gets launched in the new year.
Okay, so that's the ZD9. If you want to read the full review, it is on the homepage, so go and have a look at that. And to wrap up on hardware this week, we're going to look at streaming platforms, Ed. All of the streaming platforms, and you're going to tell us what the best playlists are on those.
Right, well, I'm going to try. I mean, this is a very subjective area, isn't it? But essentially, let's kick off with Spotify. It appears to be, I think, still just about the one that more people have than any of the others. If you're not already listening to your own Discover Weekly playlist, then for God's sake, start there. The algorithm that compiles that is terrifying. It's really very clever indeed, because if you like, it's 30 tracks, and 10 of them you'll go, well, I've heard that, yeah, great, so on and so forth. The other 20 will be, shots in the dark in an absolute sense. It's clearly taken quite a lot of thought as to where it might take, where it's looked at your listening habits, and then it would examine it quite carefully. And so I've discovered some very interesting new music using that. But if you are looking for a playlist, I have to admit this is right up my alley. There is a playlist called Knight Rider, and it's not as in the television show, as in NIGHT, which is electronica for the business of driving around. Not necessarily driving around fast. It's sort of acknowledged the fact that most of us are stuck in heavy traffic, but it can be a blinding listen, and it's updated quite regularly. That is by far and away my favourite Spotify playlist of the moment. Moving on to Tidal, I don't know about your thoughts on this, Phil, because you're also a Tidal user. I think that Tidal's curated content has gone off the boil a bit recently.
It's been terrible recently. I mean, I used to love listening to their Legend stuff, and what was the other one? Blips and Blobs. It's disappeared.
It's still there. For whatever reason, it doesn't go onto the front page, but it does happen every month if you search for it.
Right. Well, you see, that's another thing then. If they've started taking that content off the front page, no, it used to be that I used to always go to the playlist on a Monday and go through the wall and look for stuff. Yeah. And I've got to say, I go now and it's the same stuff, and you're thinking, well, this isn't updating as often as it should be. Yeah,
I completely agree. However, good news, at the time of recording the podcast, I'm pretty sure it'll still be there on Monday, the Rappers Meet Rockers playlist. This is not a hi-fi playlist, but it is an awful lot of fun. If you simply want to make an enormous amount of noise and have quite a good time whilst you're doing it, I would entertain 27 tracks, 1 hour 47 minutes. You'll be profoundly deaf by the end of it, but you'll be happily deaf. So get stuck into that.
I think even you, Ed, you'd switch the subwoofer on for that one.
I'd make sure that I had some bass at my disposal. Yes, no question. Serious bass. I have spent less time looking at Apple Music. I would say, actually, whilst Apple Music has got some interesting playlists on, they also still, to the best of my knowledge, have an exclusive on the Frank Ocean album. Now, this is a genre of music I don't swim rivers and climb mountains for. Can't get that excited about it, but credit where credit is due, that is a hell of an album. It's really very, very good indeed. It's called Blonde, I believe. Have a listen to that. It's not a playlist, I'm cheating, but yeah, get stuck in on that. It's a really, really, really good album. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. I wait to see on what media it is released, and I may well go to the business of making it my own. Probably not on vinyl, but I'm going to state that now.
I've got to say, David Brent, that album is superb. If you haven't heard it yet, go and listen to that. That would be my recommendation, because it is absolutely brilliant. I thought it was going to be, because sometimes comedy and music just doesn't work, and it's such a subjective thing, music and comedy.
Yes,
but it is absolutely superb. I love it.
Yeah, it is. The good songs, well produced and very funny.
And I think it's because it's from the we're going to play this dead serious angle that it actually works.
Well, yes.
I also think slightly that Ricky Gervais is a frustrated, failed pop star, and so I'm not sure how much of it is a joke and how much of it is real.
Yeah, well, he's got to the stage now where he can be a pop star, isn't he? He's got to that point where his popularity can sell records.
Yeah, if we're doing album recommendations, from my perspective, I would also say the new
No. You got to keep that for the end of the month. It's playlists.
Oh, okay, fine, right. Well, I'm afraid I haven't had a look at Amazon Music. If you are an Amazon Music subscriber, good luck to you, and so on and so forth. But across the three which seem to hold the bulk of subscriptions, those would be my choices. So Knight Rider, Rockers Meets Rappers, and Frank Ocean on Apple Music.
Yeah, and Knight Rider could be taken completely the wrong way, couldn't it? So anyway, thanks very much for your recommendations, Ed. We'll be back in a sec with movie news. And I'm saying movie news because we're now, well, we're Friday the 16th. This goes out on the 19th. I've not been to the cinema yet.
What a surprise!
It's minus $17.99 in that column at the moment.
Oh dear.
I'm going this weekend to see Bridget Jones's Babies.
Oh God!
Jesus Christ!
Use that on my card.
Yeah, yeah, but you've got the Magnificent Seven out there on Friday.
yet another remake, of course, because Hollywood seems to be bereft of ideas, at least when it comes to their big budget stuff. If you haven't seen the original film, it is a mighty Western. I thoroughly recommend it. It's got
I'll put my hands up.
Please watch it.
I'll put my hands up. Never seen it.
Okay. It's fantastic. It's got an amazing cast, brilliant score, and it is great fun. I mean, obviously, let's not forget this was also a remake because The Magnificent Seven, the original film, was a remake of The Seven Samurai, but at least they took a samurai movie and turned it into a Western, and this is just a straight remake of this with Denzel Washington in the Yul Brynner role. So.
But in that case, if we're doing this, then it has already been remade because Battle Beyond the Stars exists as well.
In space. But that was in space, so that's fine. And even had Robert Vaughn playing the same character in both films. But if you do get a chance to watch the original Magnificent Seven, and I might well watch it again this weekend, make sure you keep an eye on Steve McQueen. Absolutely hysterical the way that he deliberately steals every single scene he's in. Because even if he hasn't got any dialogue, he's sat next to, say, Yul Brynner's talking, McQueen will be fiddling with his hat and anything to draw your attention to him. And you can see it really pissing off Yul Brynner. So watch that. Always good for a laugh.
It's getting good reviews, actually. I've seen a couple of reviews pop up
got a good cast.
On Twitter.
No question about that.
I think the angle has been it's one of the better remakes.
Good.
I will certainly get round to seeing it at some point. If not at the cinema, then probably on Ultra HD Blu-ray.
But you've got a limitless cut, so you'll have to go and see it. So I'll tell you what, I'll still be minus $17.99 if my choice is Bridget Jones.
Well,
fair enough. Well, I will definitely be going to cinema before the end of the month because I will be going to see Doctor Strange at the end of this month. So. And I'll be doing that on a midnight screening so I can talk about it in the podcast.
Good for you.
Whilst very drowsy and
confused.
A bit asleep, yes.
Yeah, but it's usually good, Ed, because other people can get a word in edgeways then.
This is true. Although when there are just the three of us, we're propped up by Withers.
Well, you're supposed to bring your A game.
Well, it's without going into unnecessary detail, I think it's a miracle we're audible at all. So let's take it from there.
Obviously, I don't know what it's going to sound like once we get this edited, but if it's a case of I can't fix it, then obviously we've had electrical storms all over the country. On the Thursday night, we're recording this on the Friday, and we have had major problems keeping this call going on Skype. Lots of dropouts and all the rest of it. Lots of words that suddenly go from so so yeah. If it sounds okay, then we've performed a miracle. Blu-rays this week, Steve.
Well, at least. Whilst the big budget stuff seems to be bereft of any original ideas, at least with the smaller budget, more independent features, there seem to be some interesting things going on out there because we've got Green Room coming out today on the Monday, and I actually saw that last week, and it's an excellent film. Basically, the concept is it's a punk band playing a bar full of neo-Nazis, and they accidentally see a murder and then get trapped in the green room and have to fight their way out. And it's really good. It's kind of I guess you could call it a horror film to some aspects, or a thriller, mixture of the two.
But it sounds a bit
sounds
a bit Dusk Till Dawnish.
Without vampires. Yeah,
without the vampires,
instead.
obviously, it's just Nazis. Yeah, same things.
Yeah, it is a bit like that actually. That's not a bad way of pitching it. And but I thought I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It does make a few left turns. It's not completely predictable, and it is very gruesome in places. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was good. So worth checking out if you haven't seen it. Green Room. Although I should warn you, it deserves its 18 rating. Friend Request, which is a horror film. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of horror films and a lot of films generally these days that are reflecting modern times, social media, and this is one of those. I haven't seen it yet, but I appreciate that. I guess if you're writing a film these days, you're kind of thinking like, how do I incorporate things like social media? Or if you're trying to write a thriller, your first thought must be, how do I get rid of the mobile phone? Because I think I noticed a lot of films now are being set in the past, like, in the 70s or 80s, because that must be the first thought is, damn, how do I get rid of mobile phones? Because otherwise they just call the cops. Anyway, that's out, Friend Request. And also out this week, a Hologram for the King, which is one of those sort of minor Tom Hanks movies in between the big budget films like, Inferno, which comes out in a couple of weeks. He does these smaller scale movies and generally they're still good though. I mean, Tom Hanks is always a quality act. Never does a bad performance, really, in my opinion. And I haven't actually seen it, but Kaz did say that it was a quality, small-scale Hanks movie about a guy, basically, who's in the desert trying to sell technology to an Arab sheikh. So worth checking out if you're a Tom Hanks fan.
I haven't seen him in anything decent since Captain Phillips, I think.
I thought he was excellent in what's the one where he plays? Damn, he plays Walt Disney.
Saving Mr. Banks.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that on the plane, but I think it's not very cinematic, if you know what I mean. It's very much a Sunday afternoon on the TV type movie. Saving Mr. Banks, I thought it was still enjoyable though. But I think his best performance recently was Captain Phillips. I can't.
Yeah, he was superb in that.
Yeah,
absolutely superb. And it's a really good film too. I mean, nail biting, absolutely nail biting. The last 40 minutes of that film, blimey.
Did you see on American television, obviously as part of the PR bump for this Casey Sullenberger film he's doing, that Casey Sullenberger was doing him in Castaway?
Excellent.
It was actually surprisingly funny.
I'm looking forward to that.
Nothing I'd seen in interview. I mean, don't get me wrong, the man is clearly an extraordinary pilot and incredibly level-headed, but nothing had struck me up to that point he was actually in some way, shape or form a comedy genius. But it's, there you are. It's quite funny.
Yeah, that is actually one of the upcoming films that I am looking forward to, Selley, which I didn't know anything about really until I saw a trailer for it. But Clint Eastwood was directing it. Tom Hanks obviously is playing the part, and obviously it goes into more than just the flight itself, but also the after effects. And
I hope so, because the flight was only 3 minutes.
Yeah. A short film it was.
How disappointed are various small children going to be when they realise it's not about the monster?
Yeah.
But he doesn't have any spots at all.
Who's playing the part of the geese?
Well, I mean, let's face it. If this was 70s film, they'd have, flung a couple through a jet engine, Soldier Blue style. But I dare say that CGI will take up the strain on this one.
If it was the 70s, the plane would have then gone through another plane, and then, was it the airport movies where one of them is a small plane flying into a 747 and sticking out the side of it? Yeah, that'll happen.
But I'd be interesting. I mean, I have to say, I always thought that the air crash investigation episode on that
it was
landing,
superbly done.
CGI was superbly done on that. They might as well just lift it straight from that and get on with the job.
It's probably one of the best air crash investigations. That they obviously spent a lot of time and effort on that because it looked fantastic. It really did.
New series of that due soon as well. And let's face it.
There's plenty to talk about.
We haven't actually mentioned the big news this week though, and forget everything else. Obviously, the massive news this week has been that the BBC have lost Bake Off. I mean, that's just huge. Massive mistake from the part of Channel 4, I think.
Hang on. What's Bake Off and why is this significant?
Oh, Philip.
As if.
It appears quite bizarrely to have become a national institution. I mean, as I say, no one's coming out of this looking particularly good. Let's be honest. I mean, the thing that I do find quite staggering across all of this is that although the BBC has made it their own, they were unable to come up with the idea of 12 people cooking in a tent themselves.
Well, you see, the problem...
That's why they don't own it.
Well, the problem with the BBC now is everything is outsourced. And the major...
yeah, but there's outsourced and there's bought in full stop. For example, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they own the rights to MasterChef. They have another company make it for them, but the BBC can't lose MasterChef in the conventional sense because they own the rights.
Yeah, well,
MasterChef.
the same happened.
Great British Bake Off, it's not the same thing. They bought it in lock, stock and barrel.
Yeah. Okay, I get your point. It's like Top Gear because Clarkson actually owned that, but the BBC bought it back, and that's why they've still got the rights to it. Yeah, so the big issue for Clarkson now is that with their new Grand Tour, there's certain phrases and things that they are not going to be able to say, otherwise the BBC is going to sue them. So things like anything that they've done in terms of challenges and so on, where they've used phrases like such a beautiful country and other things that you would think would be just things that you would say. They're going to have to be so careful because if they've done it in Top Gear, the BBC are likely going to sue them. There might be phrases and tons of phrases and stuff that Clarkson just and co just can't say because of that. And the other big news, which I think is bigger than Bake Off actually, is that the government are now going to force the BBC, it's now part of the charter, to tell or to publish the wages of executives and stars over 150 grand. That, in terms of competition, is absolute commercial suicide.
It's true. I mean, I guess as a public company, publicly run institution, shall I say, it is interesting to see what they are paying people, because essentially as employees of the BBC, they are basically civil servants. So that's right. I would like to see how much Mary Berry is getting for Bake Off. I do think that of all the people out of the whole debacle with Bake Off, Mel and Sue came out of it quite well with their press release where they said they wouldn't be going to Channel 4. They won't be taking the dough, which I thought was quite a good gag. I mean, I guess when you're paying, stars and celebrities, the talent. I mean, a lot of, and as Channel 4, I think, are about to find out, unless they can keep the talent involved. So poor Hollywood, Mary Berry, and obviously not Mel and Sue now, by the sounds of it. Without things like Extra Bake Off with Joe Brand, or Bake Off Extra, whatever it's called, without the lack of advertising breaks. I mean, I just think it's a BBC. Up until now, it's been a BBC show, and therefore a bit of an institution in a way, and that kind of thing works on the BBC. I don't think it works so well on commercial channels with advertising breaks, and I think that ultimately Channel 4 may find that they spunked away a fair bit of money there that they're not going to recoup.
I don't care.
We'll see, I guess.
It's an interesting one. Can I just give a hat tip to the guy in general chat on AVForums? There's a Bake Off thread running, because obviously we discuss all the critical matters in general chat. And conversation turned to what the BBC might do to replace it. And if anyone from the BBC is listening, they need to get in touch with this guy immediately, because he came up with a programme called Get Your Kit Off. And it's based in a sort of shed or man cave style arrangement. And each week, contestants have to assemble either an Airfix, a Revel, or a Tamiya model kit, or perform a specific challenge around that, and then it whittles down to the best model kitter in the United Kingdom under time pressures. I would watch the shit.
I would definitely watch that. That sounds right up my street.
I'd sue them for false advertising, because I'd be expecting something completely different. But then when you said Get Your Kit Off, and I'm thinking, Channel 4's already done that dating show where it might be Channel 4, Channel 5, but they've already.
Have you seen that show?
No, I've never watched it.
But is it Naked Ambition or something? So excruciating. It's just like we really have reached the 7th level of hell now, haven't we? It's like anything goes on television now. It's just whatever. Get your cock out. It's just gone.
I'm fine, thanks, Steve. If it's all right with you.
That was another one for Top Gear. Cock. James May can no longer say cock.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I don't know. I have a lot of time for James May.
Yeah, he's all right, actually. He's better than the others. Is Grand Tour actually started? Is it on?
No. I think it's end October. I think is the rumour.
I think it's just in time for my Prime subscription to run out. So, bollocks! I'll have to pay more money.
Yeah, I mean, TV. I think the best TV is actually not on TV at the minute. I think it's on the streaming services, and there's been a few things lately in terms of trending stuff like Stranger Things. We've been talking about that recently. Absolutely fantastic television series. Again, not on TV though, not on terrestrial TV. And we've had other things like Mr. Robot, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, and loads of others that I could sit here and list. All of them being produced not for the terrestrial channels though. Interesting.
Have you seen the trailers for the remake of Westworld on Sky?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm really up for that. Looks really good.
Is that on Sky Atlantic, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to get Now TV again, won't I?
We will, because we got Walking Dead coming up. We got Westworld, American Horror Story. What else is coming up? Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming back. There's a whole host of TV coming back over the next few months. But you're right, Phil. There's some really, really good stuff coming up on streaming too. I mean, there's Luke Cage, which is the next Marvel series on Netflix, which I'm really looking forward to. And it's funny that we talk about. I mean, broadcast TV still is very important, and it still does get a lot of people talk about. Like this week, obviously, Bake Off's been national news. But if you look at the actual stuff that ranks in terms of tweets and things like that, the king by miles is still Game of Thrones, which is the most talked about TV series.
I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see what's going to happen because there's only 2 more seasons, is there, or is there just one more season?
Yeah.
2.
So, what happens when it's finished?
Spin-offs.
It'll be interesting to see what HBO do. In general, HBO have been quite decent about shows. So, for example, even their big hits like The Sopranos or The Wire, they stopped at a certain point and that was it. They haven't been tempted to do things like sequels or prequels or spin-offs. Thank God. Game of Thrones has been so successful for them, though. You do wonder what they'll do. I mean, must be a massive temptation to delve, if only to delve into backstories, because there's so much in the books and behind the scenes in the past, and obviously they can't cover in the series. So, I bet they'll be tempted. But hopefully they won't go down that route, because, spin-offs can diminish. I mean, if you look at the other really talked about series is Doctor Who. Doctor Who is still, a global phenomenon for the BBC and massive money earner for the BBC, who they do own that one. But that's had loads of spin-offs, and I think perhaps it's certainly when Russell T Davies was running the series, it had too many. It had Torchwood, it had the Sarah Jane Adventures. There was going to be one with Rose Tyler, which they eventually thought we're going over. It's too much now. I think it can diminish the value of the actual main series if they keep doing too many spin-offs.
Yeah, it's like the Stranger Things thing. I wanted them just to stop there. It's like, no, just stop. Don't do anything else. You're saying that it's going to be different storylines, though, going forward, so it's going to be a bit more...
Apparently, yes.
It will be the same cast, but completely new story. It's what I've read up to now. I mean, I think what they should do is what they do on American Horror Story, which is that they retain the cast, but each season is a completely different story, and that's a great way of keeping the whole thing going without actually having to do, because obviously a lot of TV series they just flog that concept to death, don't they? To the point where by season 7 you're like, oh god, this has jumped the shark. But they kept American Horror Story fresh by having a different story each season, just using the same actors. And they've tried the same. They've tried, well, not the same actors. But they certainly tried with True
Detective.
True Detective, thank you. Yeah, True Detective. Season 1, awesome. Season 2, not so much. So maybe that wasn't such a great idea.
Yeah, that's my worry there. Do you think with Bake Off, Ed, do you think they'll end it like Blake 7?
Someone shoots Mary Berry.
They just they'll all die.
Yeah, well, the last episode of this season, they just burn the tent at the end and just scream at the camera.
Mary Berry stabbing poor Hollywood.
bit more visceral. We shall see. I mean, the thing is, even without remotely infringing on the premise of the Great British Bake Off, my wife and I, because we're sad, in a 15-minute conversation in the car, came up with at least 6 viable baking alternative shows that we would be happy to discuss with the BBC if they felt so inclined.
Tarts and crumpets, there you go.
Yes, for those of us who can separate food from sex, or in Wither's case, anything from sex, we've got some ideas. So I personally suspect that the Bake Off will, as Steve said, will suffer as it moves to Channel 4 because it's very BBC oriented format, has to alter. But I think that actually the next big thing will appear without any significant intermission. This time next year, the BBC will have come up with something that makes us feel all warm, fluffy, and middle class inside, and all will be well with the world.
And I certainly won't be watching it, whatever it is. One thing I will be watching, but not until May now, is the new Star Trek series, Steve.
Yeah, that was supposed to start in January. This is being produced by CBS for their all-access streaming service in the States. It's going to be shown here in the UK on Netflix each week. And it was supposed to start in January, but it's been pushed back to May. Apparently, because they need more time for post-production and effects, which is fair enough. I mean, you're talking about a sci-fi series set in space, and I think they want to deliver a quality product, and they've realised they need more time in order to do that.
Yeah,
I think when they did a brief teaser, that everyone moaned about the effects looking a bit rubbish.
Yeah, well, it looked like Tron from the 1980s. The special effects, didn't it? It did. Yeah. So
was it Babylon 5 excellent?
Basically, yes, that better. But the series itself, given who's involved, I believe they're still casting, so they haven't even started shooting yet. But apparently they've got the first 3 scripts written and the whole first season planned out. 13 episodes starting in May, and I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's interesting. I think if you look at the movies, the rebooted films that have been done recently, so Star Trek Into Darkness, and now Star Trek Beyond, if you look at their actual performance at the box office, it's not that good. I think Star Trek Beyond's made 400 million tops. It cost 180 million to make, so Paramount are barely breaking even on that. Especially when they throw in the marketing costs and everything. So you've got to wonder whether they're going to continue making films if there's not any money in it for them, unless they're making a lot of money on ancillary sales. But you got to think it's spiritual homes on TV. And if they can do a really good TV series with good production values and good stories, I think I'd rather see that than the movies, to be honest.
Sometimes it's a good idea to shelve things for a little while and build up the enthusiasm for it and expectations and stuff. Sometimes it's good to do that, especially with something that's been around for 50 years. It's for a lot of that 50 years though, there was 9 new. So
I mean, it worked pretty well for Star Wars, didn't it?
Yeah. Although
$2 billion. So.
Although the fear there is that they're going to overdo it because Disney tend to over-egg everything.
I mean, they could well end up doing. Basically killing their golden goose a bit by doing too many films, too many series, too many this, too many that, too many books, too many whatever, and diminishing the value of the core product. Which goes back to the thing about spin-offs and everything like that. But
given the enthusiasm that you two have consistently demonstrated for the new material, I do think that they could get to an awful lot of output before you guys went, do you know what, enough of this, stop.
Well, you see, yet again, Ed, we're talking about Star Trek and it suddenly goes to Star Wars.
Well,
we did this last week. We were talking about the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and before you knew it, we're on to Star Wars. So there you go.
It's interesting. I haven't seen any of the trailers for the Star Trek Discovery thing. I mean, I'm quite looking forward to it. I don't know. There are so many weird in terms of the next generation actually coming back and rebooting the whole Star Trek premise for a complete new group of people. In so many ways, it does come across that a lot of that was related to blind luck. I mean, let's face it, Patrick Stewart was not if you just looked at it objectively, he wasn't a logical go-to person to do, and he wasn't convinced it was going to work either. And with the benefit of hindsight, you now look at it and think, well, it just makes perfect sense. I mean, the sort of gravitas and a bit of Shakespearean sort of influence and so forth works brilliantly. I just hope that someone's had the mental leap to do something imaginative again and give it some standalone chops and that it works properly.
Yeah.
Because just my worry is that they'll be a bit too safe.
It's a strange title as well, Star Trek Discovery. It's like Star Trek Shark Week or Star Trek Yukon Man or Star Trek Wheeler Dealers. Oh, no, that would be brilliant. Star Trek Wheeler Dealers.
With Harry Mudd in it. Presented by Harry Mudd.
Could you imagine that, Ed?
What, kicking through the second-hand starship market?
Yeah. Here's a phase disruptor. We're gonna. It's from the 70s. We're gonna update this and see if we can make a profit. Here you go, Ed.
Hold out your hand, and I'll blow it off. Yeah. Well, I mean, as I say, crossover television always has the potential to be magnificent, doesn't it? So. We shall see. But no, I mean, as I say, I just hope that there's a little bit of ambition involved in it, and I don't mean that in a monetary sense. I just mean in a higher concept stuff. Yeah. And we'll see what comes of it. So we need to sit back, wait until May.
We need actors who have a little bit more facial expression than Will Riker as well. Yeah, that was a double act, wasn't it? You had the overacting of Patrick Stewart, and then you had Will Riker, who only ever had the one look.
Some of the stuff he does in the episodes is just perfect.
Okay.
So there you go.
And on that bombshell, that's it for the podcast this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
Well, the graveyards are full of boys who are very young and very proud.
Ed Selley.
We lost. We always lose.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for the latest reviews, news and video. And of course, why not leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, and we'll read them out eventually at some point when we remember. So do that for us and leave them there.
Probably next week.
Might be next week. Who knows? Tune in to find out. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.